Hello and welcome to my channel. This is part 3 of circulatory system. In this video, we are going to discuss about structure and function of heart and few more things which are left in circulatory system. So heart is a complex muscular organ that pumps blood through 3 divisions of the circulatory system. The coronary, that is vessels that serve the heart, pulmonary, heart and lungs, and systemic, systems of the body. There are 4 chambers of the heart, 2 atrium and 2 ventricles. Left atrium and right atrium, these are the chambers that receive blood. Left ventricle and right ventricle, these are the chambers that pump blood. Heart receives blood through pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Tricuspid valves are a flap of connective tissue that open in only one direction to prevent the backflow of blood. Similarly, we have 3 more valves to prevent backflow of blood. To understand the mechanism of blood flow of blood starts from right atrium, where right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, which bring blood from upper and lower body respectively. Blood reaches from right atrium, blood reaches right ventricle through tricuspid valve, because tricuspid valve is like a flap which opens up, and as soon as blood reaches right ventricle, this flap closes and backflow of blood is prevented. Blood reaches right ventricle, and from here in the next step through pulmonary artery, it is sent to lungs. We have a valve over here also called pulmonic valve, through which from right ventricle to outside the lungs, reoxygenation takes place and the oxygenated blood is brought back to heart via left atrium. From left atrium, blood reaches left ventricle via bicuspid valve, also called mitral valve. It is called bicuspid because it has 2 flaps, unlike other valves which have 3 flaps. Once blood reaches left ventricle, the backflow of blood is prevented with the help of this valve, which shuts off. And left ventricle leaves heart via aorta artery, which is the major artery of the body, taking oxygenated blood to the organs and muscles of the body. Once blood is pumped out of the left ventricle and into the aortic semilunar valve closes, preventing blood from flowing backwards into the left ventricle. This pattern of pumping is called double circulation, as the blood reaches the heart twice. The heart is composed of 3 layers: epicardium, the outer wall of the heart; myocardium, the heart muscle cells that make up the middle layer and the bulk of the heart wall; endocardium, the inner wall of the heart. These layers help in reducing friction between the heart and other structures. Let's understand what is the cardiovascular system. It helps in transport of oxygen from the alveoli and the lungs to the heart as it is carried in the blood. The heart then pumps the oxygenated blood to respiring cells around the body. In exchange, carbon dioxide moves from the body to the alveoli for removal. This transport is done by hemoglobin present in the RBCs. The nutrients are absorbed in the blood circulation from the small intestine. Hormones are released from the endocrine gland into the blood, and they move into the blood to reach their target cells, tissues, or organs. Insulin is released from the pancreas and is moved around the body, affecting all cells. Oxygen transport by blood. Hemoglobin is a protein molecule found in red blood cells made up of 4 subunits, 2 alpha subunits and 2 beta subunits. Each subunit surrounds a central heme group that contains iron and binds one oxygen molecule. Molecules with more oxygen bound to the heme group are brighter red. As a result, oxygenated arterial blood, where hemoglobin is carrying 4 oxygen molecules, is bright red, while venous blood that is deoxygenated is a darker red. These are 4 subunits of hemoglobin: alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. It is easier to bind a second and third oxygen molecule to hemoglobin than the first molecule. This is because the hemoglobin molecule changes its shape or conformation as the oxygen binds. These subunits stay in a tense state. As soon as oxygen binds to the first subunit, binding of oxygen to one subunit changes the affinity of oxygen for rest of the subunits, and these subunits change from tense state to relaxed state. And thus, the active sites become more available for oxygen to bind. This is called cooperativity. This is a cooperativity curve of oxygen, which shows a sigmoidal curve showing binding of one molecule initiates binding of other molecules also. There is a right shift in the curve with higher carbon dioxide, lower pH, and higher temperature. And there is a left shift in the curve with high pH, low temperature, high hemoglobin, oxygen affinity, and lower CO2. Hemoglobin adult is usually the one which shows sigmoidal curve, whereas hemoglobin, fetal hemoglobin, HbF, is the one with more affinity. When carbon dioxide concentration in the blood increases, it reacts with water to form bicarbonate and hydrogen ions, and thus pH decreases. The increase in CO2 and decrease in pH reduces the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. Thus, more oxygen is needed to reach the same hemoglobin saturation level as when the pH was higher. Fetal hemoglobin has higher affinity for oxygen, so it is able to bind it from the mother hemoglobin. In muscles and organs, myoglobin binds oxygen tighter than hemoglobin, and the amount of erythrocytes is very high in blood. After centrifugation, they are located at the very bottom of the tube. Above them is a pale thin layer composed of the remaining formed elements of the blood. The pulmonary circulation takes place from the heart to the lungs and then back to the heart. The systemic circulation takes place from the heart to the body parts and then back to the heart. The deoxygenated blood circulates from the heart to the lungs via pulmonary artery and returns it to the heart via pulmonary vein. The systemic circulatory system circulates oxygenated blood from the heart around the body into the tissues before returning deoxygenated blood to the heart. Thermoregulation is done by vasoconstriction and vasodilation. Vasoconstriction is when the blood vessels of the skin constrict, reducing the flow of the blood to the skin, which reduces the amount of heat loss from the blood vessels of the skin. This conserves heat. And vasodilation occurs when the blood vessels of the skin dilate and the flow of the blood to the surface is increased. It increases the amount of heat loss from the blood vessels of the skin, increasing heat loss.
That's all for the video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.